Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, and today I wanted to talk about how many monsters we can reasonably expect to be featured in the upcoming expansion to Monster Hunter Rise. Now, one of the reasons I want to bring this topic up is because naturally we've had a huge influx of newcomers into the franchise all the way back in 2018 with the release of Monster Hunter World, and that is something that makes me really happy. You know, fresh blood pouring into a franchise that I've been passionate about for a long time is something that makes me really happy, and is also clearly something that allows me to create more and more content about this franchise that I really like. Unfortunately, one of the things that I've noticed as time has gone by is the misconception that a lot of people still have of what is a G rank expansion, what is an ultimate expansion. Also, because Capcom kind of like changed the names, it's now really called Monster Hunter World Ultimate or Monster Hunter World G rank. They changed it to Monster Hunter World Iceborne, or in the case of Rise, it's Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. But ultimately, this is the same as the ultimate expansions that we've seen in the past. In the case of, for instance, Monster Hunter 4, it would have been Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. In the case of Monster Hunter Red Generations, it would have been Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate in the West, because if you go to Japan, in there it would have been Monster Hunter 4 G. Or Monster Hunter, it's not even Generations there, it's called Cross, but the expansion was called Monster Hunter Double Cross. But it gets a little bit confusing, especially when people are trying to figure out what's a G rank, what's a Master rank, what's an Ultimate. Like, are we only gonna get 6 monsters or however many have been announced so far for Sunbreak? I get it, I understand, and that's why I'm here to kind of like bring you guys a bit of a synopsis as to what has happened in the past and kind of what you can expect will happen for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, okay? So ultimately, you have to look at these expansions as a really old school expansion, which is something that in reality is not really done in gaming all that much over the last couple of years. We mostly get some form of DLC. Like I understand that recently Gearbox released some DLC to Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which cost like, I don't know, $15 or something like that, and it was about 10 minutes of content. And therefore, you know, due to certain publishers making these outlandish decisions of essentially, you know, not really serving their customer base accordingly, you know, people start looking more cynically when it comes to expansions to video games, which is why I can understand the take that someone might have when they see something like the 2 live events that we've had for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. And you look and you start counting and you're like, okay, so how many monsters are we going to be getting for Sunbreak? I mean, they've talked about Malzeno, Garangolm, Lunagaron. That's 3. You can see those on screen right now, although the footage was a little bit, washed out. I'm sorry. New setup, still getting used to it. But anyways, Malzeno, Garangolm, and Lunagaron, these are kind of like Malzeno being the flagship, obviously, but Garangolm and Lunagaron being a part of what they're calling the 3 Lords. Then yesterday, we also received the announcement of Seregios, which is a returning monster, Aurora which means this monster has been in previous Monster Hunter games. I believe he was both in Generations as well as Monster Hunter 4. Actually, he was the flagship of 4 Ultimate. A lot of people seem to think it's Gore Magala. No, Gore Magala was the flagship of Monster Hunter 4, the base game. Seregios was the flagship of Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Anyway, then you also got Aurora Somnicanth, you got Magma Almudron. These are 2 new subspecies. For those of you that don't, some of you guys might have entered the game in Rise, and you might not be entirely aware of what a subspecies is. It's like a different version of a monster that you've already seen that has a couple of different aspects to it. There's also the variant monsters, and in the past we've also had deviant monsters, which kind of had been adapted into this game in the form of apexes, which are not quite like deviants, but it gets complicated. But suffice it to say, it's going to have some moves that will be similar to the Somnicanth. It's going to have some moves that are going to be different. It's going to be the same thing for Magma Almudron, which is in Rise a water monster, whereas in here it's going to be a fire monster in Sunbreak. Does that mean that the Almudron and regular Somnicanth are gone? No, they're still going to be featured. There's still going to be G-rank versions of these monsters, potentially with new movesets and stuff like that. They're going to be scaled up. You're going to be fighting them again. That's kind of like the concept of a G-rank expansion. You grab everything that you already had in the base game, and you bring it up a notch with more difficulty, new gear, new moves in some cases, and just basically it's like, let's get all of this stuff, bump it up, and on top of it, let's add more monsters. So we have 6 monsters here already. If we go to the other section, they also announced Astalos, which is another returning monster from Generations. Astalos being one of the Fated 4, just like Mizutsune is also one of the Fated 4. For those of you who do not know the Fated 4, you might be wondering, what is the Fated 4? There was a quest in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. I'm not sure, was it just Ultimate or was it just in Generations? I think it's actually just Generations. It doesn't matter because, you know, Generations Ultimate has all of the quests of Generations. It doesn't really matter. But ultimately, there was a quest there that was called the Fated 4. It included Astalos, another monster that you might have not seen before called Gammoth, another monster that you might not have seen before unless you've played Monster Hunter World called Glavenus, and another monster which is Mizutsune, which is currently in the game. So we already have one of the Fated 4, which is Mizutsune, and they're adding another one, which is Astalos. And, you know, the Fated 4 is something that a lot of fans of Monster Hunter like, so we always wish we could see the Fated 4 together in a game again. So, you know, that's why people bring up the Fated 4. Anyway, but this is just a little bit of lore for those of you that are not aware. But we got Rathalos here. We got Blood Orange Bisheten, which is, again, a subspecies of Bisheten. And we have Shogun Cyanator, which is another returning monster that has, you know... This monster is usually really good for people who like longswords. I mean, I'm speaking mostly because of Rest Razor Cyanator, which is a Generations Ultimate monster. But regardless of that, right? I'm deviating a little bit from the point. The point is, you look at this, right, at all the information that has been announced so far, and through the fact that they already opened up pre-orders, and you might think like, okay, so what is this expansion about? We get 9 new monsters? That's it? No. That's not it. But I can understand why some people might think like that, like I said, because of the way that some publishers deal with DLC. So what I wanted to do with you guys here today is we're going to take a look back at some of the older monsters so that you guys get an idea of what you can actually expect is featured in an Ultimate expansion. So here you have 2 examples. I want you to ignore Monster Hunter Portable 3rd because this was a special game that only came out in Japan. I wish they would have released this in the West, which is, you know, one of the reasons why a lot of us in the West are super happy that Monster Hunter is this successful now, because everything's a worldwide release, not like back in the day where Japan got the game 1 year in advance and we would get the game 1 year later here in the West, which kind of sucked. But anyway, so if you look at 3 Ultimate, it is the sequel to Monster Hunter Trial, though 3 Ultimate is something that they did which they got a little bit... They got a little bit too much into it, so do not expect Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate levels of content, because this was something that wasn't necessarily planned. But anyways, Monster Hunter Tri came out with 18 large monsters. For comparison's sake, if you guys are curious, I believe that Rise came out with about 31. Actually, can I even see that? I should be able to see that. If we go here and we go comparison of previous monsters, Monster Hunter Rise came out with 46? I thought it was about 30. 46 was the base version, but then with 2.0 and 3.0, they added a bunch more, I guess. I don't remember exactly how we get to the number 46. But anyways, Monster Hunter Rise has 46 monsters to give you an idea, right? This is the base version of the game. So the base version of Monster Hunter Tri, this was a long time ago, obviously 2010, and it was on the Wii. It had 18 large monsters. When they remastered it, when they re-released it. Oh, damn. I just realized you guys can't actually see this page properly in my setup here, so I'm going to move it slightly. That should fix it. But as I was saying, Monster Hunter Tri released with 18 large monsters, right? You can see that right there. Then in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, we have 51 large monsters. That's 33 new monsters. Now, some of these monsters are going to be, you know, subspecies and stuff like that. Other monsters are going to be completely brand new monsters. Some of them might be returning monsters from like Monster Hunter 1 or Monster Hunter DOS or something like that, right? So, you know, but just be aware that new monsters that you would be facing in the game, 33. Plus, like I said, you also get the old ones scaled up to G rank and stuff like that, right? But, you know, let's take a look at another one. For instance, we have Monster Hunter 4. Monster Hunter 4 launched with 52 monsters. And then Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which is essentially the same thing as going from Rise to Rise Sunbreak, launched with 75 monsters. So that's 23 new monsters in 4 Ultimate. And look at how the numbers grow. They're just like 75. Boom. Crazy number of monsters, right? Now, keep in mind that these games were made on the 3DS, which means that assets are easier to develop. They're not as detailed. And, you know, these were simpler times back then as well. The monsters were not as complex and did not have to deal with, when you think about Rise, for instance, you know, your hunter is moving a lot faster. You have wire bugs, so they have to calculate for all that stuff. And also back in the day, maps would have different zones that you would have a loading screen in between each zone. So what I'm trying to say is that it was easier to create content for the 3DS, naturally, because it was much more simple times. Now it's a lot harder because, you know, monsters are more detailed, maps are bigger, your hunter has more moves that it can use to counter the monsters, right? So we got 23 new monsters from 4 to 4 Ultimate. If we then look at Generations, we have Generations, or Cross, if you're talking about the Japanese version, which launched with 71 monsters, and then the Double Cross, or Generations Ultimate, launched with 93 monsters. So that means you have a difference of 22 monsters added into the game. And then you have, in the case of World and Iceborne, World launched with 36 monsters, not launched, but like launched with 30-something monsters, then added new monsters with DLC. Point is, it ended up with 36 monsters, and Iceborne had 71. So that's 35 more monsters from World to Iceborne. So I actually had this question in one of my comments in my video where somebody asked me, you know, how many monsters can I reasonably expect? I'm thinking about potentially buying the game, something like that. And, you know, you were saying in your stream that you shouldn't just expect 9 monsters like they have in the page. You should expect a lot more. This is why I'm telling you this, right? Like from each iteration of the game, you can tell that at the bare minimum, you get like 20 new monsters. So that's what I said. Bare minimum, I would expect us to get at least 20 new monsters. But in all honesty, I would expect a lot more. Potentially 30, maybe even more than that. And again, keep in mind that you're also getting the other monsters brought back, which is like 46, which I wasn't even aware there was 46. For some reason, it's a lot in my mind. It's like 30-something monsters. It's actually 46. It's a lot more than I initially expected. But it's like, expect to get... Actually, looking at this number, I'm almost going to be... You know, even conservatively, I think that 30 is a conservative estimate. 30 additional monsters added to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. On top of that, there's also naturally revamps of the combat system, like we talked about that. I might be doing a video with more details into that, even though the recap that I did yesterday is pretty much very detailed in regards to that. But yeah, you can expect a lot of monsters. You can expect a lot of content. Let's say if you're someone who spent about 100 hours in Monster Hunter Rise, I'd say you can expect to play about, I don't know, 150, maybe 200 hours on Sunbreak after you finish the stuff that you've done in Monster Hunter Rise. And again, this is a conservative estimate, just assuming that you played about 100 hours, because I know that I spent over 500, but then again, I'm also creating content, so it's not necessarily fair. But I would expect to get at least 600, 700 hours out of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. And again, that would be a conservative estimate, because if we look at Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne, it was like 1,600 hours and then 2,300 hours. It's crazy numbers that we're talking about when it comes to hours of entertainment that you got out of it. So this is, again, not to tell you guys, oh, go out and buy and pre-order, do all the things. It's mostly to clear up what you can expect from an Ultimate expansion and like what the numbers can look like in terms of monsters and the expectations you can set for yourself. As per usual, let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below, because ultimately the objective here is to inform people so that you're aware that this is not your typical $10 DLC that you see a lot of other companies doing nowadays, which is, you know, minimalistic type of stuff. This is like a full, big, old school expansion, and we don't get a lot of those nowadays. Yeah, let me know how you guys are doing in regards to Rise and Sunbreak. I know that, you know, a lot of people are just waiting for the next Monster Hunter title because Rise didn't really do it for them, which I think is fair, because World and Iceborne are very different from Rise. And I feel like they scratch a different itch for different people. Personally, I like both styles, but I know that some people don't. But either way, you know, let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed the video, hit it up with a like, and stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.